Prince Kari's dagger pressed against her throat wasn't what scared Zuri. It was the recognition in his eyes when he saw her birthmark. Dawn had barely broken over the palace walls. The royal gardens lay quiet, except for bird song and the gentle rustle of leaves. Zuri knew she shouldn't be there. Slaves were forbidden from entering the inner sanctum of the king's domain. But the royal lilies called to her, their unopened buds promising beauty her hands longed to tend. She hadn't heard him approach. Who dares trespass in the king's garden? His voice was controlled, authoritative, but softer than she expected from a prince. Zuri froze, keeping her eyes lowered as slaves were taught. "Forgive me, my prince. I tend the outer gardens." "Look at me when you speak," he commanded. She raised her eyes slowly, a small defiance she couldn't help. His face surprised her, not harsh like his warrior brother, Prince Jabari, but thoughtful, with eyes that seemed to truly see her. "You're either very brave or very foolish," he said, lowering his blade slightly. "Don't you know the punishment for a slave entering the royal gardens?" "Death," she answered simply. Something in her calm acceptance seemed to trouble him. The dagger lowered further. "You don't fear dying?" "I died the day your brother's men raided my village. What remains is just a shell that works and breathes." The honesty of her words hung between them. For a moment, he seemed to see her, not as property, but as a person bearing unimaginable loss. A breeze rustled through the garden, catching her thin robe. As she moved to steady herself, the fabric slipped from her shoulder, revealing a distinct crescent-shaped birthmark etched into her skin. His sharp intake of breath told her he recognized its significance before she could cover it. His eyes widened, darting between her face and the mark, his own hand moving unconsciously to touch his wrist where his royal cuff covered the same shape. "Impossible," he whispered. In one fluid motion, he sheathed his dagger and glanced around the garden to ensure they were alone. His entire demeanor changed, urgency replacing authority. "The royal gardens are forbidden to you," he said loudly, in case any guards were within earshot. Then he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But the eastern wall has a broken stone. The guards change watch at sunset and sunrise. They are less attentive during those times." Before she could respond, he was gone, disappearing between the flowering bushes as silently as he'd appeared. Zuri stood frozen, her fingers tracing the birthmark on her shoulder. The mark her mother had called a blessing from the moon goddess. The mark that, in her homeland, signified those touched by destiny. What did it mean that the prince bore its twin? She didn't know then that this chance encounter would unravel everything, the kingdom's most guarded prophecy, her true identity, and the future of two lands bound by blood and betrayal. She only knew that for the first time since being dragged to Azania in chains, she felt something dangerous and forgotten stirring in her chest. Hope. That night, sleep evaded Prince Kari. He paced his chambers, fingers tracing the crescent moon on his wrist, the mark the high priestess Makeda studied in her ancient scrolls, the symbol whispered about in prophecies. When two moons join, a new dawn shall rise. The words had always seemed distant, mythical. Now they felt immediate, dangerous, real. The slave girl's face haunted him, not just her beauty, which was undeniable, but the quiet dignity she maintained despite her chains. And that birthmark, identical to his own, hidden on her shoulder like a secret waiting to be discovered. It couldn't be coincidence. The prophecy spoke of two moons uniting, bringing change to the kingdom. His father and brother had always feared these words, seeing them as a threat to their power. Perhaps they were right to fear. Tomorrow he would find her again. He had to know if she was truly the one the stars had foretold. "You came back." Kari didn't bother hiding his surprise when he spotted her kneeling among the moonflowers 3 days later. The eastern sky was just turning purple with approaching dawn. He'd come to the garden each morning, waiting until the sun rose fully before giving up. Today, finally, she'd returned. "You told me when the guards would be distracted," she replied, not looking up from the white blossom she was tending. "I decided it was worth the risk." "To see flowers?" Now she looked at him, a flash of something fierce crossing her features. To feel human again, even if just for a moment. The honesty in her words struck him. Kari lowered himself to the ground beside her, ignoring the dew that soaked into his fine robes. "The moonflowers shouldn't be blooming now," he observed. "It's not their season." She smiled slightly. "They bloom for me, Plants respond to voices, to touch. As if to demonstrate, she began to sing, softly, in a language he didn't recognize. The melody was unlike anything in Azania, haunting and beautiful. Before his eyes, a closed moonflower bud trembled, then slowly unfurled its petals, opening to the world hours before its natural time. "How did you?" he began. "My mother taught me. Before." The word before contained worlds of meaning. Before the raid, before the chains, before her life was reduced to serving others. "Where are you from?" he asked gently. "A place your maps no longer show. Your father's armies were thorough in erasing us." Kari flinched. The burden of his family's conquests suddenly felt heavier on his shoulders. "I've studied all the kingdom's maps. Which territory?" She hesitated, then met his eyes directly. "Nyota, the kingdom of star readers." Kari's breath caught. Nyota was more legend than history now, a kingdom said to have been ruled by women who could read destinies in the stars, who could heal with songs and plants. His tutors had dismissed it as a primitive place of dangerous superstitions. Yet here was this girl making flowers bloom with her voice. "You're a long way from home," he said finally. "Home no longer exists. Your brother made sure of that." The mention of Jabari darkened Kari's expression. "My brother takes pride in conquest. I take none in his actions." "Yet you wear the same royal crest," she observed. "We don't choose our blood." His hand unconsciously moved to cover his birthmark. "Though sometimes blood chooses our path." She noticed the gesture, her own fingers drifting to her shoulder. "Is that why you didn't report me? Because of this mark?" "The high priestess speaks of a prophecy," he explained. "One I never understood until I saw your birthmark." "My mother called it moon-blessed," she said. "In Nyota, those born with the crescent are believed to carry great purpose." Kari reached into his robes and withdrew a small leather-bound book. "This contains all the star maps and prophecies collected from conquered territories. I've studied it for years, searching for." "For what?" she prompted when he trailed off. "For meaning, I suppose. My brother believes strength is everything. My father values tradition above all. I've always felt there must be more to ruling than power and custom." Before he could say more, a bell rang in the distance, the changing of the guard. Their time was running out. "Meet me tomorrow," Kari said impulsively. "I can arrange for you to tend the Queen's private garden. No one would question your presence there." Suspicion flashed across her features. "Why would you do that?" "Because you make flowers bloom out of season," he said with a slight smile. "And because I think we both have questions only the other can answer." He stood, brushing dew from his robes. "One more thing. What's your true name? The one from before?" She hesitated, then lifted her chin. "Amara. My name is Amara." "Amara," he repeated, the name feeling right on his tongue. "It means grace in the old language." "And bitter in mine," she countered, a challenge in her eyes. Kari laughed, surprised by her boldness. "Then we shall see which meaning proves true." As he turned to leave, he placed something on the stone beside her, a small carved wooden box. "Until tomorrow, Amara of Nyota." After he disappeared through the garden paths, she cautiously opened the box. Inside lay a perfectly preserved star map, clearly torn from a book, showing the constellations visible only from her homeland. A map that proved Nyota had existed, that her people's knowledge had not been entirely erased. It was treason for a slave to possess such a thing. It was treason for the prince to give it to her. Yet as she traced the familiar patterns of stars, tears blurring her vision, Amara felt something crack open inside her chest, something she'd sealed away the day they'd put chains around her wrists. Whatever game the prince was playing, whatever the matching birthmarks might mean, she would proceed carefully. But she would proceed. For the first time since her capture, she had a weapon more valuable than any blade: knowledge. And perhaps an ally. Over the following weeks, their dawn meetings became a ritual. In the Queen's private garden, they could speak without constant fear of discovery. The prince taught her to read Azanian script, while she shared the stories and healing knowledge of Nyota. "Your people knew more about plants than our most learned scholars," Kari marveled as she explained how certain flowers could be used to treat fever. "Knowledge gathered over generations," Amara replied. "Knowledge your brother's armies tried to burn." "Yet it survives in you," Kari said softly. Their hands touched briefly as she passed him a bloom, innocent contact that sent warmth through them both. Neither acknowledged it, but neither pulled away. Each day, the wall between prince and slave eroded further. Each dawn meeting, each shared secret, each moment of understanding created something new and dangerous between them. Something neither could name, but both began to treasure above their own safety. Neither noticed Lady Nia watching from a distant window, her eyes cold as she observed their growing closeness, their lingering glances, their too familiar way of speaking. Neither saw the shadow of Prince Jabari passing behind a column, pausing to study them with calculating eyes, noting how his brother leaned too close to a slave girl, a girl with secrets hidden in her very skin. The trap was already being set, though they were too lost in each other to see it closing around them. This is just the beginning. Watch part 2 now to see what happens next.